I mentioned before that we've actually seen some examples of this inheritance, so let's take a look at those again. Take a look at the static pages controller. Remember here, static pages controller is a class, and it's inheriting from application controller. So let's take a look at the inheritance hierarchy of the static pages controller. We can actually instantiate a new controller right here in the Rails console. What's its class? Well, we can probably guess. It should be this. It is. Superclass is application controller. That's this inheritance hierarchy right there. And if we look at the application controller, that inherits from action controller base. So if we call superclass again, that's what we should get. Indeed. Let's just keep going. That inherits from action controller metal, close to the metal. That inherits from abstract controller base. How far does it go? Aha! Now it inherits from object and basic object. So the inheritance hierarchy of that looks like this: static pages controller, application controller, application action controller base, action controller metal, abstract controller base, object, basic object. So you can see that the same basic things happen at the top of the hierarchy right here: basic object, object. But then there's a lot more structure added by these intervening classes. Now if we look back at the controller itself, you can see that, well, it's got these methods. Can we do this? Controller dot home. Can we do that? And the answer is yes, it actually works. It exists. Now it returns nil, but it didn't give us an error. Right? If we did this, that's going to give us an error. But this actually works. It returns nil. But that's not what calling the home action does in the context of a Rails application. Right? If you call the home action, what happens is that it renders the home template. And so this is why it's actually not all that useful to be a Ruby expert before you pick up Rails. I mean, it certainly helps, but there's a lot of work to become a Ruby expert. And it's just not important for a lot of the things you do in Rails. And in particular, if you know a lot about plain Ruby, it can be really confusing because this kind of behavior, that rendering a template automatically, is not at all what you would expect based on a naive understanding of Ruby.